Hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for October 1st, 2023. Every week, we take a look at some headlines, news stories, and articles from across our great state. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and let's see what's in the news. First article we want to talk about this week is from CPR News, CPR.org. Douglas County School Board to pay $103,000 as part of ruling that it broke open meetings laws. Now, this is a really important issue. We've seen this happen in Denver County schools as well this year. Colorado has some great sunshine laws, some laws that allow public access to government. It's an issue I'll be talking about more in the coming weeks. Article from September 27th, 2023. The Douglas County School Board will pay out more than $100,000 as part of a court ruling that they violated Colorado's open meetings laws. Board members approved a resolution Tuesday that details the cost that will be paid to Highlands Ranch resident and state representative Bob Marshall, who filed the lawsuit in 2022. Of course, Bob Marshall is a Democrat who won by the slimmest of margins down in Douglas County. I can only think that part of the reason he's behind this is to grow his name to become more of a power player in terms of the eyes of unaffiliateds, to be somebody who is building a reputation for himself, standing up for open meetings, open access. And so I think it's part of his campaign plan, really, personally. In June, Douglas County District Judge Jeffrey Holmes ruled 4 members of the board broke the state's sunshine laws by conducting a series of one-on-one private conversations about firing former Superintendent Corey Wise. Marshall is asking for more than $103,000 in attorney's fees and court costs, which the district has to pay because a judge ruled they broke the law. The hearing will finalize that payment is scheduled for October 6th. Critics say by not agreeing to settle the lawsuit in May, the board went against its own policy to be good stewards of the district's financial resources. The settlement would have required them to acknowledge publicly that they broke the law by talking about public business in private. Instead, the 4 board members, Mike Peterson, Christy Williams, Becky Myers, and Kaylee Winigar, requested a jury trial. A judge denied the request and ruled that 4 broke the Colorado open meetings law. So very interesting to see this happening. Of course, school boards are one of the biggest places where the political battles are going on in our state, across the country as well. But really interesting to see how Marshall, a Democratic representative, is using open meeting laws to hold government accountable. And, it is a good thing. Ultimately, these school board members, especially some of these newer elected representatives, need to understand how sunshine laws work and really understand when they can keep information private and when they have to give it to the public. So there we go. Of course, CPR, I'm sure, is jumping on this type of issue to try and go after this conservative school board, of course. So there we go. Colorado open meetings laws, an issue that'll continue to be important and a great issue really for activists and people in the community to become more aware of so that you can hold government more accountable. Let's move on. From Liberty Leader Natalie Menton on Complete Colorado, page 2, September 24th, 2023. Opposition to Proposition HH quickly growing. Of course, you probably know by now Proposition HH will be on our November ballot. It will rob us of our Taxpayer Bill of Rights tax refund money and provide very minuscule and easily overridden property tax relief. Property owners, tenants, business organizations, and government district associations were not included in the Proposition HH negotiations, as it was rushed through the Colorado legislature in the waning days of the session. In addition, legislative debate over the measure was cut off, which led to the House Republicans walking off the floor on the last day of the session. One of the Proposition HH sponsors, State Representative Chris DeGray Kennedy, pointed his finger at Governor Polis. Quote, "I'm also frustrated by the governor's lack of stakeholding," end quote. He wrote in a text message with a lobbyist acquired under the Colorado Open Records Act. It's another example here of Open Records Act, these Colorado laws that provide more access and transparency to the government. Now that nearly 50 pages worth of Proposition HH financial impacts are being dissected, opposition to the measure is steadily growing. The National Federation of Independent Businesses, NFIB, polled their members in August. 9 out of 10 members oppose Proposition HH. The Colorado Municipal League Board of Directors voted to oppose Proposition HH and issued a press release on September 1st. The Colorado Special Districts Association, SDA, vehemently opposed the measure during the legislative hearings. The SDA board formally opposed Proposition HH on August 7th and is offering an opposing resolution template for members at their website. Club 20, representing Western Slope individuals, businesses, town, and county governments, resolved to oppose, per State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer, who attended the forum speaking against Proposition HH. There's legal challenge. At least 17 counties joined the lawsuit to halt Proposition HH from appearing on the ballot. The lawsuit was dismissed when Judge David Goldberg ruled that the court didn't have jurisdiction to interfere with an ongoing legislative process. The lawsuit is based upon several legal issues, including violation of the single subject constitutional clause. Proponents. One single issue committee, Property Tax Relief Now, is supporting Proposition HH, described by a Colorado politics reporter as being funded by, quote, wealthy Democrats and Democratic organizations, end quote. Funders of the pro-HH effort include large out-of-state special interests such as the Washington, D.C.-based 1630 Fund, a left-wing dark money funding group, $60,000, and the National Education Association, $100,000, also based in Washington, D.C. 5 ballot issue committees oppose Proposition HH. RejectHH.com, No on HH, Vote No on HH.com, HHsucks.com, HH-No.com, Americans for Prosperity. As we get closer to the November election, expect the opposition to Proposition HH to only get bigger. So Natalie brought up this great point. There's people from all across Colorado, different backgrounds, different organizations, even local governments coming out in opposition to Proposition HH. Proposition HH is going to be terrible for Colorado. Let's hope the word gets out to the voters that this is going to rob them of their tax refund and do next to nothing to actually lower their property taxes. Well, let's move on. DenverGazette.com. Of course, if you're online, if you're on Twitter, especially with Elon Musk going down to the border, immigration is a massive issue right now. So, DenverGazette.com, September 27th, 2023. Texas governor has sent 1,600 immigrants to Denver, will likely send more with new surge. So, we're getting more and more immigrants coming to Colorado, the Denver metro area. Of course, there's this massive homeless issue where there's thousands of people unhoused in the streets of Denver currently. Looks like their numbers are going to grow. And of course, this costs a lot of money for the city and state. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has bused more than 1,600 immigrants to Denver since May and expects to send more with the new surge at the Mexican border. In response to the latest surge, the Texas governor has activated buses along the border to transport immigrants out of the Lone Star State. As of Wednesday, Denver has received more than 20,000 immigrants. Wow, let that sink in. Denver has received more than 20,000 immigrants, mostly from South and Central America. Roughly 1,900 of these immigrants are being temporarily sheltered, according to city officials. Pretty interesting to see that disparity there. In particular, Denver Mayor Michael Johnston is trying to get 1,000 people off the street, 1,000 homeless people in Denver into some sort of housing, temporary at the very least, by the end of the year. And of course, now we're having 1,900 immigrants also being housed and 20,000 total going around there. To date, the city has spent more than $26 million, of which roughly half has been reimbursed by state and federal government. Wow. Wow. So it's still going on. Of course, this is a major issue. It's going to continue to be a major issue and something to definitely keep an eye on. What are the solutions? What are anything anybody here can do in Colorado about this? It's hard to say exactly, but something definitely to keep an eye on. Let's go ahead and move on. Going to the Gazette.com. An editorial from the Gazette editorial board. Will Colorado's legislature lean further left? It's a great question, and it seems likely. This is from September 27th, 2023. No question about it. Colorado's political trajectory has favored ruling Democrats for the last several elections and likely will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Republicans can blame in part their own state party's disarray, as well as a former one term Republican president. For all his appeal in some climes of the country repels Colorado's dominant unaffiliated voting bloc, particularly unaffiliated women, poll after poll shows it. As for the overall political orientation of those unaffiliateds, their ranks swollen by an influx of transplants from other states, they may well lean more left than right, with or without Donald Trump serving as a lightning rod on the ballot. Veteran GOP political sage, being generous, and Gazette columnist Dick Wadhams believes young, unaffiliated newcomers in places like Denver are, quote, really liberal Democrats, end quote, by a different name, he recently told the Gazette reporter. The real question for now, as we noted here only recently, is what will come of the growing rift within the ranks of Democrats. They hold all of Colorado's statewide elected offices and overwhelmingly control both chambers of the legislature. Will prominent Democratic moderates, who seem to have been on mute for the past several years, at last speak up and try to move their party's policy agenda back toward the middle? Doing so could shore up unaffiliated support for Democrats amid an epic crime wave that stands to draw rank and file voters to tough on crime Republicans. Or will the Democrats' growing and increasingly restive radical fringe, augmented by the appointment last month of Denver Democratic activist Tim Hernandez to fill a vacant seat in the state house, continue to tug the party and the rest of the state ever further down the progressive path? So it is hard to say, of course, where it's going to go exactly. It is very interesting to see one of the biggest question marks going into the 2024 legislative session. One of the biggest stories is how radical will the left-wing element of the Democratic Party be, and will the more moderate, more business-centered, more Chamber of Commerce type Democrats be able to kind of stifle some of these left-wing voices? We have at least four card-carrying members of Democratic Socialists of America, a Marxist organization, serving in the state legislature. So one could only think that the legislature will lean further left. However, going into an election year, it seems that some of these politicians, especially in some of the more uh, districts that could swing either way, swing districts, they're going to be a little more tempered, of as is what we usually see, right? That's with the Bob Marshalls, as we saw in the previous articles. These other politicians who know that they only won by a couple hundred votes. They're not going to do anything to alienate the unaffiliated voters who put them in place by being too radical. But we shall see. Big question. Very interesting story for next year. Let's move on. I thought this was interesting. I know there's still more to come with this story. We'll see if the press reports on it at all. They usually don't follow up on a lot of stories like this. But nonetheless, on September 28th, 2023, Gazette.com, Colorado Springs man fatally shot in alleged act of self-defense identified. Police. So a woman, apparently, is what it seems, has shot and killed somebody in self-defense at an apartment complex. Let's take a look at the article. The man who was fatally shot in an alleged act of self-defense at a Colorado Springs apartment complex Monday has been identified, according to a Wednesday announcement from the Colorado Springs Police Department. At around 1:15 a.m., officers received reports of a shooting in an apartment complex in the 6900 block of Alpine Current View. According to police, the woman who reported the shooting told authorities she had been about to be attacked by a man she had met, so she shot him. Officers on the scene discovered 26-year-old Kymer Williamson deceased in the apartment parking lot. The woman was located in a nearby hospital parking lot. She was interviewed and released that night, according to police. The investigation is currently active and ongoing. Officials said Williamson's death is being investigated as a homicide. So very interesting there. If they released that woman that night and then are calling it a homicide, it's pretty interesting. But nonetheless, if she really did kill this man in self-defense, it goes to show the value of guns, especially for a woman to be in a situation where she's in a dark parking lot at night, is able to actually use a firearm to defend herself. So an interesting story to keep an eye on here. We'll see what comes up. Let's move on. Axios.com, Axios Denver, September 28th, 2023. Denver evictions on track to hit record high, from Esteban Hernandez. Eviction could hit a record in Denver this year after a surge in filings. The city's Department of Housing Stability said at a public budget hearing last week that it's projecting 12,000 eviction filings this year, far above the record at 10,240 filed in 2010, according to city documents. Mayor Mike Johnston said during the hearing that there are currently about 1,200 eviction filings a month, calling the situation a crisis. Why it matters, let's see what Axios says. Evictions directly correlate to homelessness, which is growing across Metro Denver. Of course, what we're going to see is this far left legislators coming out and saying that people should not be evicted even if they can't pay their rent. Of course, this in an insane free market system, individuals getting evicted, maybe because the rent is too high, maybe because the economy is not doing so well, would lead to a market correction where maybe rents would stabilize to a lower amount or other such situations where prices come down as people leave the community if people can't afford to live there. Could be a readjustment in market pricing. Of course, what I want to see is the politicians not get involved in these situations. Of course, as it says here, the top reason was an inability to pay rent or mortgage. Not only is this a sign of the times in Colorado with record high rent, but of course, our economy is struggling under this crippling inflation and just total shutdown of the markets by government regulation and other political action. Let's go ahead and move on here. Associated Press, APnews.com. Mom of Colorado man killed by police after taking heroic actions to stop gunmen settles with city. So if you hadn't heard, of course, Johnny Hurley was a hero of Old Town Arvada who used his firearm, concealed carry man, used his firearm to put down a criminal who had already targeted one police officer, killing him, and was wandering around with a firearm looking for other people to murder. Johnny Hurley rushed to action, selflessly gave his life to stop this man, and of course was killed by law enforcement who seemingly mistook him for the shooter. So September 28th, 2023. A Colorado City, Arvada, has reached nearly $2.8 million settlement in a lawsuit filed by the mother of a man killed by police in 2021 after taking heroic actions to stop a gunman who had shot another officer, a law firm announced Thursday. Kathleen Boleyn filed a lawsuit in June 2022, a year after the midday shootings in the main square of Old Town Arvada, a historic shopping and entertainment area about 7 miles northeast west of downtown Denver. Boleyn said her son Johnny Hurley ran toward danger and shot the gunman, Ronald Trokey, who had just fatally shot Officer Gordon Beasley. An investigation found Trokey, who died after Hurley shot him, was intent on killing as many officers as he could that day. Boleyn remembered her son Thursday as a talented chef who rode skateboards and snowboards, enjoyed winter camping, had a beautiful singing voice, and could bust out some pretty incredible dance moves. You can't erase what Johnny did just because his life was erased, Boleyn said. Without my son, my life is diminished. But without Johnny's heroic spirit, the world is diminished. In the 2 years and 3 months since this happened, I find that I'm stronger than I thought I was and sadder than I used to be. The lawsuit said Hurley 40 was crouched down with a rifle, pointing down and not in a threatening position when he was shot, adding that a witness said Hurley was taking the magazine out of a rifle that he took away from the shooter. A district attorney investigation cleared the officer who shot him, Craig Brownlow. The investigation said it appeared to the officer that Hurley was reloading the rifle or trying to fix something on it. District Attorney Alexis King has said that Brownlow thought Hurley was a second shooter and that he had only a moment to stop him from hurting others. Mr. Hurley's heroic intervention saved lives that day. His bravery and selflessness will never be forgotten, said Rathode Mahambi law firm in the city of Arvada in a joint statement. Recognizing that this was a horrible set of circumstances for all involved, the parties have agreed to settle the matter. The trial in the civil lawsuit had been scheduled to start on October 6th. Johnny was a hero, not because I say so, Boland said. Ask anyone who was in the square that day. Ask the chief of police. Ask the community of Arvada. I think they all remember clearly what happened that day. She said people have come up to her crying, saying, I know I'm alive because of what your son did. Wow. So, of course, a tragic situation. Johnny Hurley needs to be remembered and honored. Another situation in which a citizen armed with a firearm was able to stop a criminal intent on mass murder in his tracks. and just absolutely tragic and negligence upon the part of Arvada's police for killing a hero, for putting somebody, for shooting somebody who was doing the right thing. Let's go ahead and move on. Thought this was interesting. Don't know entirely who a concerned citizen is on this concerned Substack, but of course, as we talked about before, school boards are one of the hottest fights here in Colorado, as well as across the country. So I thought this was pretty interesting. Just at least wanted to share it with you. Don't know much about who's behind this, but nonetheless thought it was interesting. Dangerous Humans in Weld County, September 22nd, 2023. There are dangerous men and women who sit on the Greeley-Evans School District 666 Board of Education who call themselves human while they pretend to care about kids. Watching Natalie Mash and Dr. Brenda's fake nice opening statements at the 2023 School District 6 Board Candidate Forum made me reminisce of the past, when they so openly demonstrated who they really are, and it's not so nice and sweet. I wonder why they didn't wear their rainbow pins to the forum. They always wear them for the regular board meetings. These two dirty, rotten politicians. There they are phony, mean women who in their professional lives love giving shots to other people's babies, even though they know vaccines are deadly. Wow, I mean, this article goes through. I thought this was interesting. Not even talking about the claims that's written in here in this Substack, but more or less seeing this as a kind of opposition hit piece for candidates to go after these people here in the upcoming election. So exposing their record, getting some clips off the meetings. There's a look at she does not look like a very nice woman in this picture. So more than anything, I mean, check this out if you're in Weld County, of course. But nonetheless, more than anything, this is an interesting put together or an interesting website, an interesting attack on some political opponents. And so I thought I'd share this just as an example. Maybe you're a candidate running for office. Maybe you're helping some candidates get elected. These things can have an impact. I mean, look at this lady. She's in Weld County School District and she's a Bernie person. I mean, that should be a pretty big red flag right there. Doesn't look very nice. Doesn't look very inclusive. That's for sure. So definitely check that out. I thought this was interesting. Of course, a big trend we've seen is parents who are concerned about some of the material in the schools, in the school library as being pornographic, reading excerpts from the books at these Board of Education meetings. So here, this lady's crying because she can't handle what she's reading that kids are being exposed to on a daily basis. So nonetheless, pretty interesting. Uh, check that out if you're interested and really think about doing something along the same lines for your own local area races. I love all these screenshots and all of this being put together. So there we go. Let's go ahead and move on. ColoradoCommunityMedia.com. Douglas County considers property tax relief, urges other local officials to do same in summit meeting. Event in Castle Rock draws crowd of representatives of local entities from September 29th, 2023. An unusually large spike in home values and an impending jump in property tax bills pushed Douglas County officials to call a meeting of local government leaders in hopes they may act to blunt the impact on residents. At that summit meeting, county commissioners floated the possibility of taking action for property tax relief at the county level, while representatives of smaller local entities expressed willingness to do the same or voiced concern with managing tight budgets. We haven't made any final decisions, but we're discussing a plan to lower county level tax rate, Commissioner Abe Layden said during the September 25th meeting at the commissioner's headquarters in Castle Rock. Local taxes are in the spotlight after homeowners around the Denver metro area checked a notice from their county assessors this spring and saw that their home value had jumped by sometimes shocking amounts. Now, the reality is, yes, property taxes have increased here in 2023, but in 2024, when you get your property tax notice next year, prepare to be shocked even further. Driven by the costly real estate market, those home values, as calculated for tax purposes, have spiked since the last time homeowners received notices of value 2 years ago. In Douglas County, residential properties faced increases between 30 and 60%, with a median of 47%. Wow. So property taxes are going to be increasing like crazy. So it is on the prerogative of local governments to be able to lower property taxes in their community if they do the right thing, but it's up to the local citizens, of course, to pressure and inform your local city council, your local county commissioners, people involved in the schools, and of course, special districts to lower your property taxes at that local level by lowering the mill levy rate. Then, of course, trying to lobby the state legislature to lower the assessment rate in the coming legislative session. So, check this out. Really interesting article. Good journalism from Colorado Community Media. Let's go ahead and move on. Oh my gosh, now this one upset me. And if you are somebody with a large vehicle, if you are somebody who is in the automotive market, this should upset you as well. This is CPR.org from September 29th, 2023. Bigger vehicles are more dangerous to bicyclists and pedestrians. Should their owners in Colorado pay for new safety projects? Wow. Wow. Basically, they want to create a new tax on people who own larger vehicles. Of course, they do, copying what they do out in California and other places. A legislative committee will consider a bill on Tuesday that could raise up to $20 million a year, so steal $20 million a year from Coloradans, for projects to make the roads safer for pedestrians and cyclists by creating a new registration fee that would scale with the weight of a vehicle. The higher the weight of a car, truck, or SUV, the more its owner would pay, because supporters say heavier and larger vehicles are more deadly to pedestrians and cyclists. Research backs up this claim. Here's Lisa Cutter. State Senator Lisa Cutter is going after your truck, is going after your van, is going after your SUV. Quote, "We're looking at this and trying to do something about it." Lisa Cutter, a prime sponsor of this proposed bill. Wow, absolutely terrible. Money raised by this tax would go to a new enterprise within the Colorado Department of Transportation that would fund infrastructure such as separated bike lanes, road narrowing, and automated speed cameras. Oh my gosh. So they actually want to make life harder. So they're going to take money away from people who own vehicles and make life harder to drive in Colorado. Separated bike lanes, narrowing roads. Absolutely and utterly ridiculous. I mean, the roads are terrible in Colorado and they want to make them worse. And of course, automated speed cameras, putting up cameras to generate revenue. Absolutely and utterly terrible. Such a fee would touch a lot of Coloradans. Light trucks, which include both SUVs and pickups, are hugely popular in Colorado. They accounted for 86.9% of new vehicle registrations last year, according to industry data. But the proposed annual fees would be relatively small. Of course they would. I mean, this is absolutely and utterly ridiculous. People, as you said, punishing people who are buying larger vehicles and, of course, using that information or using that money to make life more difficult for people driving in Colorado. This needs to be resisted. Of course, these politicians are out of touch, making life more expensive and more difficult for people in Colorado. Absolutely and utterly despicable behavior from our elected representatives. Let's go ahead and move on. ColoradoPolitics.com, just a recent news story from September 30th, 2023. Colorado GOP rejects proposal to opt out of 2024 primary election. Majority of state Republican Central Committee votes to cancel primary, but total falls short of required supermajority. Colorado Republicans on Saturday voted down a proposal to opt out of the 2024 primary election in order to prevent the state's unaffiliated voters from helping pick GOP nominees. While a majority of the party's state central committee meeting in Castle Rock voted to withdraw from the primary, the vote fell far short of the 75% majority required under state law. The vote was 259 in support of opting out and 143.5 against, for roughly 65% in favor. That outcome, said GOP Chairman Dave Williams, bolsters a lawsuit filed by the party in federal court seeking to overturn the voter approved 2016 ballot measure that established the semi open primary system, which allows Colorado's nearly 2 million unaffiliated voters to cast ballots in either Republican or Democratic primary elections. Quote, "We all understand that this kind of proves the point of the lawsuit, that the state has imposed upon the Republican Party an unconstitutional threshold, and the numbers bear that out," Williams told Republicans after announcing the results. Republicans who want to close the party's primaries insist that voters who aren't registered with the party shouldn't have a say in the party's nominations, while opponents argue that withdrawing from the primary risks ignoring the wishes of nearly half of the state's voters who are unaffiliated. I mean, the reality of it is that these unaffiliated voters are more than likely not going to vote for a Republican candidate anyway. They will vote for them in the primary election to skew the results how they'd like. So I think primary elections are a total waste of time personally. Love to see us return to a more of a caucus type of system where individuals in the community in your local neighborhood are deciding who's going to be on the ballot to represent them, not some hodgepodge group of any voter who's in the state of Colorado. Let's go ahead and move on. Last story I want to talk about this week. Check out my interview with Taylor Rhodes, Rocky Mountain gun owners, came out on September 27th, just a few days ago. So today is October 1st. This new law is being enacted. Our authoritarian governor, as well as this anti-gun state legislature, is putting a new requirement, a new infringement on the rights of Colorado gun owners by requiring a 3-day waiting period before you can pick up a legally purchased firearm after you've paid for it or after you've passed this background check. So October 1st, a 3-day minimum waiting period for purchasing a firearm goes into effect in Colorado. Now we expect today that Rocky Mountain gun owners, Taylor Rhodes, are going to be suing the state to go after this law, to stop it, and you can donate to their legal fund to help them do so. Each of these lawsuits that they've been involved in cost nearly $1 million. Currently, Rocky Mountain gun owners is going to be suing to stop this 3-day minimum waiting period. Also, Rocky Mountain Gunner should sue to stop the minimum age requirements to purchase a firearm. Taylor Rhodes talks about that in my interview with him. And they are currently involved in the statewide standard capacity magazine ban lawsuit as well. So check that out. Of course, this and all the other links are on freestatecolorado.com. Thank you very much for joining me this week. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.